previous video, we talked about what support cards are. Now let's figure out what makes a support card good. Just a disclaimer, this is my personal opinion. If you don't agree, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to comment in the comment section to tell me what you think. Just, don't blame me. So in general, when I'm evaluating a support card, there's 4 sections I think about. The first is the support effects. The second is the skills it can give you. Third is what happens at each uncap level. And the fourth one is just any extra bonuses the card can give you. The way you look at a support card will be affected by the overall goal of your run. There are multiple goals you can have for a run, and this is just a list off the top of my head, and this isn't like, oh, you have to pick one goal and you're done. You could have more than one goal from this list. So it could be that, oh, you want really high stats, you're skill hunting, you're doing a lot of races, or you're trying to get a lot of fans. For this guide, I'm gonna focus more on specifically looking for high stats and specific skills. In no particular order, when I'm trying to maximize my stat gains, I usually try to prioritize friendship bonus, initial friendship gauge, specialty priority, and mood effect. So to understand why I prioritize these 4 support effects, let's talk about how we think of an Uma's career. The first part of a career should be focused on trying to maximize the friendship with support cards as quick as possible. You want to, by earliest, have your support card friendship maxed out by the first New Year's event, latest by the first summer event. And of course, if you get your friendship maxed even before the first New Year's event, that's fantastic. This is why initial friendship gauge is important, because instead of starting off with 0 friendship, if you could start off with some sort of friendship, then you'll be able to maximize your friendship quicker, which means you'll be able to begin the second part of your Uma's career quicker, which is the second part of an Uma's career is once that friendship is maximized, you get access to rainbow trainings, and so I like to think of it as chasing rainbows. So basically what a rainbow training is and how it's activated is when a support card is at least orange friendship and it's in its specialty, it'll become a rainbow when you try to train with it, which means that you'll get additional stats to your training. And so what happens here is you get access to now the friendship bonus, which is the first support effect on my list. So basically now, every time you have a rainbow training, you'll get that additional friendship bonus added on to your stats. This is why friendship bonus is really important, because if the majority of your Uma's career is going to be you chasing rainbows, you want to try to get as big of a friendship bonus as you can so you can get as many stats as you can. This is why also specialty priority is important. Basically, what specialty priority does is increases your chance of your support card showing up in its specialty. So basically, the higher the specialty priority, the more likely you're going to see rainbows. So you can sort of see the synergy for the first 3 support effects: friendship bonus, initial friendship gauge, and specialty priority, right? We remember, again, the first part is trying to maximize friendship. So a higher friendship gauge means we can maximize our friendship quicker. And then once our friendship's maximized, we can try to chase rainbows as much as possible. And the only way to do that is to have a higher specialty priority. And then, we want to have as much stat gain as possible when we're clicking those rainbows, which is where the friendship bonus comes into effect. And then we have mood effect, and mood effect is nice to have. So in general, when you're training your Uma, the mood the Uma's in will affect your stat gains. So in general, when an Uma is in a great mood, it will get a 20% multiplier to its stats. And then if it's in an awful mood, it gets a negative 20% multiplier to its stats. So now let's take an effect for the support effect, mood effect. So if you're in the best mood, you have your 20%, and then in this case, the mood effect is 30%. So that means multiplicatively, your 20% is now going to increase by 30%. So you take 20% times 1.3, and now your mood effect is a 26% increase to your stats. And what's nice about this is it happens in any category. So if you have a speed card, and you're training in wit and the speed card shows up in the wit category, you will still get that mood effect bonus from the support effects. That's why I think mood effect can be important, because mood effect alone already gives you a very big bonus, and I think this just increases that bonus even further. When talking about support effects, we're also thinking about unique perks. So, usually in the unique perks, they could double up on a effect that I really like. So for example, the Kitsu-san Black SSR card has in its unique effect that it increases the specialty rate up by 20%. And in addition, its support effects has a specialty priority of 80%. So it's increasing the specialty priority by 100%. So instead of there being an 18% chance of the card showing up in speed, it now has a 36% chance of showing up in speed. And it's not only looking for just like to see 2 of the same support effect in a card. You may also want to look at a unique effect, because a card could be like super good, but missing one support effect you really need. But that support effect could just be in the unique effect, and so you could be saved. That's why make sure you're also looking at the unique effects of a card. And now we have skills. So using a support card, there's a few ways to get a skill. One is through a guaranteed event, one is through an event that could occur, and then another way is through a hint. And then when I'm actually looking at the skills, this is like a list of attributes I look for in skills in general. So in general, I like corner effects because they can happen later on in the race, and I think that's important. Golden recoveries are good because they give you 5.5% recovery to your HP. I may look for debuffs if I'm making a debuff type horse. I think velocity and acceleration skills can be important depending on when they activate. So for example, if it's a straightaway skill, I don't like those, because what happens is sometimes in the beginning of a race, you're on a straight, and so your velocity or acceleration can increase, and it's sort of not useful there. I would rather it increase the velocity or acceleration either during a corner or during the last spurt of a race, which leads to last spurt skills. So I like those sometimes, because if they can activate either, just as the last spurt just begins, then it could be super helpful. Skills that are dependent on your distance or strategy can be good, and what I mean by that is they only can activate for that specific type. So for example, if you have a skill that says medium, it will only work on medium races. It will not work on long, sprint, etc. If you have a skill that is for pace chasers, it will only proc for a pace chaser. So even if your horse has an A in pace chaser, but you're running it as a late or an end or whatever, it will not proc the pace chaser skill. It has to be a pace chaser for that race. I like skills that can depend on like passing others, to make it easier to pass somebody, and then just in general, like maybe better positioning. So I find a lot of times when you're towards the end of a race, your horse gets like crowded in, and so it's harder to break out and try to get to the front of a race. So, better positioning skills can help avoid that. So a very popular example is the Super Creek SSR card, because it has Swinging Maestro, which is one of the best recoveries right now in the game. So it gives you 5.5% recovery of your HP on corners, which is like super good. Also, it kind of has other nice things. I like that it has home stretch haste. It increases the velocity in the last spurt. It also has ramp up, which increases velocity when passing another racer. So I think like those are also pretty good. Another one is the SR Dictus card, which is a wit card. So this one's good if you're trying to build a debuff horse, because there's, as you can see, lots of different debuff skills. Your uncap level can also affect if a card is good or not, because one thing is certain effects are locked until you get to a certain level. So that means, you need to uncap your card to get to that certain level. And then the second part is it can actually increase your effects. An example of this is the Inez Fujin card. So at 0 uncap, she basically doesn't have any specialty priority, but she does have initial friendship gauge. She has mood effect. She has friendship bonus that's pretty good. So I would probably want to try to get extra of her if I'm running a guts build. And as you see on the right, when she hits level 45, she gets a specialty priority of 40. And then as you can see also, her other stats increase. So her initial friendship gauge went up, her friendship bonus went up, etc. And then if you want to see something really crazy, let's just look at level 50, for example. You can see once you hit level 50, which is the left side, her specialty priority went from 40 to 80, which is insane. And then everything else, of course, went up. But, that's a pretty big jump. So in general, for this type of card, I would probably want to get a lot of uncaps for her. Again, there's a lot of things to consider there because, do I have the resources to uncap this card as much? And then also another thing is right now in the global meta, guts is not like a big thing. So I wouldn't really be running guts cards, but in the future, guts cards are a little bit more important. So, that's just something to keep in mind. And then lastly, there's like some extra stuff a card can have. Now I want to note that if a card is really bad, but they have like one good extra thing, I'm not picking that card. I just like to look at the extra thing, because if I have like two cards that are almost the same, but like, one has one thing that's extra that's better, I would go for the extra thing. So one example of this is the Fine Motion SSR Wit card, because on the first guaranteed event, you can get Practice Perfect which allows you to stay focused during practice or just decreases your chance of failing a training. Another example is the Aishin Flask SR Speed card. So what I like about this is guaranteed event. In the first one, it gives you maximum energy, which is nice. And it also increases your mood and energy. So if this procs like early on, or if it procs when, your mood happens to be down, it could be really helpful so that you don't have to spend an extra day wasted on dating. And then, the second event gives you plus 20 energy, which I think is a lot. And it also gives you a hint for homestretch haste, which is, also nice. So I think it's good to know this because it helps you decide what card is better to borrow and then which card you could substitute for it. And then, which card should be running over the other if you don't happen to have one card maxed out. So one good example of this is I only own one copy of the Fine Motion SSR Wit card. So it's kind of hard to run that. But I have a maxed out Daiwa Scarlet support card, but it's only an SR. So here's the example. If you want to pause to read what the cards do, then feel free. But as you can see, my 0 copy Fine Motion card has a really low specialty priority compared to my Daiwa Scarlet, who has 50%, which is super good. In addition, the Daiwa Scarlet card has a mood effect of 40%, but the Fine Motion one doesn't even have the mood effect unlocked yet. And there's a couple small things, but in general, you can see that Daiwa Scarlet's effects are much better than a 1 copy of a Fine Motion card. Another example that's common is people deciding if they want to borrow a maxed out Super Creek or a maxed out Kita-san Black. So one thing I would seriously consider is the skill that Super Creek gives you, which is Swinging Maestro. I've said it before. It's a really, really good skill. However, if I'm running a sprint or mile horse or a horse in general that doesn't care about stamina as much, I may want to choose the Kita-san Black speed card over the Super Creek card. It could also depend on, do I have, in terms of support effects, something that's comparable to Super Creek or something that's comparable to Kita-san Black? But in general, in a world where we're just deciding Super Creek versus Kita-san Black, if I'm running a horse that doesn't care about stamina as much, I'm going to choose Kita. If I'm going to run a horse that cares about stamina, I really want to have access to that Swinging Maestro, so I would pick Super Creek. And if you're curious about oh, I'm in a situation where I don't have Kita-san Black and I can't borrow her, what should I run? These are some cards that I would like to run usually. For the SR cards, the Sweep Tosho and the Aishin Flash, I try to get them as maxed out as possible. For the Sakura Bakushin, ideally you want her as high as possible, but running her with just 1 copy could be pretty good. And then the special week one is from the event from the beginning of the game. So if you happen to have maxed it out or get it as close to max out as possible, that's pretty good. And the main reason why I choose these is because the support effects on them are pretty good and have usually what I'm looking for. I think in particular, the special week one has access to a skill called Gourmand, which recovers endurance mid-race for pace chasers, which I think is really good. So that's also another reason why I would run that one if I can't run Kita. And then if I can't borrow Super Creek and I don't have a Super Creek, these cards I would consider running. And, again, the SRs, as many copies as possible is always the best. The Saiyan Sky one, you could probably run at least 1 copy, would be great. But in general, these would be my replacements. It's sort of the same reasons. It's the support effects are really good. They all have the support effects that I really, really want. Then also the Saiyan Sky card has some decent skills on it, like Escape Artist. It allows you to go to the front mid-race if you're a front runner. And then also there's the Keeping the Lead one, which increases the ability to maintain the lead when leading by a large margin mid-race. And it's for long races only, which is important because, if you're in the lead in a long race, it's going to take a very long time to get to the last spurt. And so maintaining that lead can be important if you're a front runner. Thank you so much for watching my video on how I evaluate support cards. Feel free to ask questions or make comments in the comment section below. And yeah, good luck bruising your Umas, and I'll see you soon. Bye!